We're going to continue ours right here. The next up is the Circuit Court, and we see Judge Greenberg is here, and Judy Roop, and I'm Trevor Loball is here as well. Good morning, Judy.
SAO next.
What?
State's attorney next.
The courts are next. What did you just say? Yeah, courts are next. We would like to get started as soon as we can, please. No, I guess, is Gabe left? I don't know.
He's in the back.
Okay. Seat the panel, please. No, we're going to do, courts first, then you, and then the sheriff. Please, Your Honor, how are you? Welcome to the County Council.
Robert Greenberg, I'm the Administrative Judge for the Circuit Court for Montgomery County.
Judy, please.
I'm Judy Roop, the Circuit Court Administrator. Good morning.
Good morning, Trevor Loeb, Office of Management and Budget.
Very good. Susan, would you like to lead us through, please?
Sure. The FY20 recommended budget totals expenditures of $15.3 million. That's a 5.06% increase from the FY19 approved budget. It reflects two changes that have service impacts, and that includes one new paralegal position to support a new juvenile magistrate, as long as one part-time administrative aide to cover increased trust office workload. It also has the following identified same service adjustments, which are listed on page 2, and that's primarily compensation issues. As far as the new juvenile magistrate on page 3, they expect a new juvenile magistrate position to start on or around July 1st. I had thought this was a state-funded position. I had judges on the brain, but it's actually a lapsed position that they've had open for several years that they plan to fill this year.
And just to be clear on that one, it's the county funds it, but the employer is the state. Is that correct? It's not a county. Is it a county employee? It is a county employee. So that would count as part of one of the new FTEs that we're doing?
No, that's not an actual new position because it had been lapsed.
Oh, it's been lapsed. I see. Okay.
I did want to point out, because there was some concern that a new juvenile magistrate position would require an additional holding area to service the additional courtroom. This change might have some significant impact on the sheriff's office budget, which we will discuss with the sheriff's budget before you. I think it's the third item. It would require both additional staffing, and it would require construction of a holding area. Sheriff's deputies may be required to detain and transport additional youth as hearings require. However, the court has advised, when I asked about this, that it'll be able to delineate the duties between the new magistrate and the existing juvenile judge in a way that minimizes or even eliminates the need to transport detained youth to the hearing rooms. There's more detail included on Circle 10, but I was wondering if the circuit court could speak to that a little bit.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would
I'd
you
be
like
glad to, yeah.
Please.
So this has been a matter of discussion, and essentially the judges, the juvenile judges are on the 4th floor of the South Tower. The magistrates are on the 2nd. What we would do would be to have any hearing involving a detained individual on the 4th floor. So it would eliminate the need to transport that child throughout the courthouse, and I think that will eliminate this problem entirely.
Yep. Good. Any?
The new administrative aide position for $23,000. This is a new part-time position that'll support fiduciary reporting requirements and maintenance of case files for active guardianships of disabled persons and guardianships of property of disabled persons and minors and other entities under the court's jurisdiction. The office is currently staffed with 2 full-time employees. The courts indicated that the trust office cases have increased from 195 in FY10 to 401 in FY18. There's a chart included on Circle 11. This increase is attributed to special immigrant juvenile cases. In addition, the county's over 65 population is increasing, and by 2045, it's expected to increase to 21% of the overall population, which will have an impact on guardianship and trust cases in the court. The other new position is an IT Specialist 2 position, which is full-time, and this position will support the migrated data between the new MDEC case management system and the current case management system called HP, the migration of Access databases to SQL, and the development of new databases, related interfaces, and reports. There's also been some reclassifications that are being used to offset these new positions, so they've had a budget reduction of about $178,000. The court plans to reclassify several positions that currently support the case management system in order to realign staff complement with the court's changing IT needs that result from the implementation of the new MDEC. The classification changes will create savings to offset the new positions they've requested, and the specific changes include on page 4, one project manager business analyst, a system analyst, a senior IT specialist, assistant, these are converting to project manager, the integrity testing analyst, configuration management analyst, and a technical analyst. There are some technical adjustments to specified programs and grant awards. Those are mostly technical, so I'm not going to run through those. But there is another MDEC update, which includes an additional $50,000 for testing, and I need to clarify this for you. I thought it was the extension. They're actually going to delay the implementation of the go-live date for MDEC from November until February 18th, 2020, and I thought the $50,000 was related to that. The $50,000 was already programmed for the needs for the upcoming year. As far as the delay, OMB and the Circuit Court are going to watch that to see if there are any additional needs. And I assume that they'd come over with a supplemental appropriation if it were necessary. At this point, council staff's recommending approval as submitted.
Thank you. I know that the MDAC is really been something that you've been working on, probably much more than you ever cared to be working on for quite some time, and the calendar on when it's going to actually be done it keeps moving. But it looks like we're heading towards a good conclusion in some point. Yeah.
Yes, we've had the opportunity to take a look at our data in the new system and start to exercise how the court would run with the new system, and it's promising. I think one of the challenges we have is we thought we'd get 2 versions or 2 drops of the new software, and we're getting 5. So that's why, it's just going to take us. It's a very complex system to schedule everything and to manage workflow. And so we need time and attention at this stage to ensure that all systems and all processes are fully documented and available to be supported in the new system, and it's just taking time. But the good news is, all the resources from the court's perspective, doing everything we can. It hasn't expanded in terms of the scope, it just has elongated.
Well, and it's obviously so very necessary that all of the information is there and is correct and can be used as quickly as possible. So we're better off to be a little slower and get it right than be quicker and not get it right. So any other comments?
Very helpful, thanks for your work.
Thank you. It's a 3-0. I know you were concerned, so okay, it's a 3-0. Thanks. Next, we're going to hear from the state's attorney, Mr. McCarthy. And if everyone who was, yeah, that was very kind of you. And let me thank you on behalf of everyone in Rockville that you did that. Yeah, that's right. Would you like to identify the panel, please?
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm here with Judge Michael Algio, retired circuit court judge from Montgomery County, who runs one of my trial teams, and Lisa Russo, who is my budget analyst.
Good morning.
Good morning. And you are staying, but you can identify yourself as well, please.
Trevor Loba, Office Management Budget, still here.
He's probably the most important.
That's right, yeah. Yeah. It's a good thing you're still here. We appreciate it. Susan, if you can lead us through, please.
Yes, I'd be happy to. I wanted to remind the committee that the new MOU, formal agreement between Montgomery County State's Attorney and the Howard County State's Attorney has been signed, and I didn't know if Mr. McCarthy wanted to speak about that a little bit.
Let me just begin by saying I sent and transmitted to each member of the county council a copy of the fully executed written agreement outlining some of the details and responsibilities of both of the parties in that. I think, may I say, obviously, I'm well aware of some of the community concerns that grow out of the Robert White case. I think that some of the issues about increased transparency, written reports, appearances at public hearings where we've agreed to coordinate with each other to appear to answer the public's questions about these very critical investigations. I think we have attempted in some way to address some of those concerns. I will also tell you that I put up on my website last evening a report regarding a shooting that occurred after a failed bank robbery in Silver Spring where a man indicated that he was carrying a bomb. He was shot and killed by the Montgomery County Police as he was making his way towards the Silver Spring Metro in the middle of the day. The Metro was crowded with all kinds of people from our community, but a detailed report indicating the nature and the kind of report I think that the people of this county can expect moving forward to be received in the case of any police use of force that results in a death in this county. I think that's indicative of the kind of thing the community is entitled to, that they are demanding, and I think in some ways responsive to some of the conversations we've had. Again, we believe that the MOU is a best practice model that was recommended in 2015 by the Obama administration regarding policing in the 21st century. And again, it's our attempt to add transparency, reliability, so that the community can know that these cases, which are so critical, are interviewed or are conducted properly. I think part of the rationale for sending the case out is there are relationships that grow up between police and prosecutors because of a continuing relationship you have over the years. I gave an example the other day when I was with Mr. Gibson, the newly elected state's attorney in Howard County, that and I turned to the acting chief, Russ Hamill, and I said, look, I had great faith in Russ Hamill as the chief of police, but the reality is I've known him since he was 15 years old. Right. I taught him in high school. I knew his father. I knew his mother. I know his wife, who's a homicide detective. I know every one of his children. Now, would I investigate a case differently? No. But I could do that with scores of officers in Montgomery County. The bottom line is, would people think that the fix is in for one reason or another because of a relationship I have with the police in general or particular officers specifically? And I think that's why we try to get that independence. Yep. I know there's other efforts that are pending here in this council regarding expanding that kind of independent review at the police level. But I think this is an important, bold step, and I think that I want to give great thanks to Rich Gibson, who's the newly elected state's attorney in Howard County, for joining me. Because quite candidly, when Rich was elected, I did not know if they were going to be willing to accept a continuing relationship, because we are 4 times larger than Howard County. And while the number of cases has not been large, they've taken far more cases from us than we've taken from them. But they're still willing to join in this partnership with us, and I thank them for that.
And we thank you for all your efforts on this. Go ahead, please. Did you? Yeah.
Sure. Well, just on this topic, I don't know if you had comments, Mr. Chairman, but I thank you all for being here and for the update. I was glad to see you formalize the memorandum. I am glad that Howard County was willing to play ball as well. I think many of us were surprised it wasn't in writing to begin with, right? It was just a verbal agreement. And so that just documenting and formalizing it certainly is a good process. I am worried that, as you said, the decision to treat the memorandum as confidential work product and not to share it, except sort of verbal descriptions of what's contained in it.
I actually transmitted to you a 7 or 8 page summary that every one of the members of the council has. And you go to my website, I've published the report. It's up on our website. I've pledged to publish it, and you have a copy of it, and I have published it.
Oh, and future memoranda won't be considered work product?
Well, what is in the possession of Howard County is different. What I have, I am putting out as the state's attorney for Montgomery County. I am publishing a report and did publish a report, which quite candidly, is exactly the same. The only thing, I will tell you, the only thing that I did is I think that there was identifying information about the names of the civilians that were in the bank. There were 14 uniformed police officers that were interviewed during the course of with their rank and serial numbers. There were 13 others whose body cameras were examined. There were 2 firearm examiner, two use of force experts that were consulted. I took out the personalized information about those persons' names, nothing else. So you have the complete investigative summary absent the names. I did leave in my name. I did leave in Mr. Gibson's name. I left in the name of the police officer who was the individual who took the shot, and I left in the name of the individual who was shot. The other identifying information about people involved in the investigation, I left out. That's the only thing that is not there. I didn't, because I was protecting their personal privacy.
That's great. So under the MOU, future memoranda, when they're transmitted to the referring jurisdiction, they'll be public as well?
I'm going to publish every case that occurs in Montgomery County. If you look at what you received last night, Mr. Hucker, that template is the one we're going to use in every case. We've already discussed that. You will get a published report from me every single time, summarizing the entire breadth of the investigation. And to tell you how, just for example, and again, these things are so complicated, there are 35 35 members of law enforcement were involved in this investigation. 35. To show you the complexity of it. That includes expert witnesses from both Howard County and Montgomery County. That includes bomb experts from the fire department. That includes uniformed officers that responded. That includes evidence collectors who responded to the scene where they had to begin to seize bank footage where the bank robbery was foiled, to the location where the individual who attempted that bank robbery was shot and killed by the police as he was a short distance away from the platform at the train station. But I am publishing a report, and you are going to get the full report from me. It will be published by me to the public, and the only thing that's going to be deleted is personal identifying information with people's names. Everything else you will have.
That's great, thank you. I wasn't sure we'd be talking about the Robert White shooting today, but since you brought it up, in the letter that we got from the Howard County State's Attorney in that matter, there weren't a whole lot of details.
This is much different.
Have you received more details, and are you willing to request more details?
On the Robert White matter?
I mean, there's still obviously a lot
Well,
of,
the state's attorney who did the investigation is no longer in office.
Right.
He's retired. And
But the office
deputy
is-
state's attorney who did the investigation now works in a different county. They're no longer with Howard County State's Attorney. The 2 principal people that were involved in the case are no longer with, one is retired, he was the state's attorney, and the other now works in another county. I would be certainly willing to ask them for more details, but again, what I would be asking people to do, because the template moving forward is what we published. And I think you'll see the thoroughness of the investigation. And that is what I think the people of the community can expect moving forward. They're going to see from us in all of these cases.
well, that sounds like progress, for sure, but you're willing to ask Mr. Gibson for the details of that investigation? Or why?
I can ask Mr. Gibson, can I say something? Because I did not know this. Rich Gibson did not even know about the Robert White case. He knows not, literally when it came up, again, this is not a comment on Mr. Gibson's competence, it was just something that preceded him coming into
Right,
office.
sure.
I think he does, the people who conducted the investigation, nor does he have specific, unique information about it, those people are gone.
Right, I mean, the details of the investigation and any notes they made about the decision they reached presumably are still in the custody of the office, correct?
I would assume the answer.
You might not be able to comment on their judgment.
I think the answer is yes. I cannot specifically answer that. I don't know the answer.
But you're willing to ask?
Oh, I'm willing to.
Yeah,
I will only if he has additional information he can supply. That's correct.
Thank
I mean, but again, what I'm attempting to do is talk about what we're moving forward, and I think I would ask if anybody wants to reasonably look at what we're going to be doing, look at what is up on the website, look at what's being published, look at what was distributed to every member of the council last night, and you'll see that is our template for how we are going to attempt to be more transparent and forthcoming about every detail involving these very, very critical cases.
I think that development and your work to make that happen is laudable, and that'll make people feel much happier going forward and more confident in our transparency. I do think any additional details you can get and share with the public, or at least with us or whatever, about how that decision was reached would be helpful with the public to address the remaining questions about that case.
Okay.
And why there wasn't a,
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'll do what I can to accomplish that.
thanks, John. Mr. Chairman.
No. Thank you very much, but let's actually get into a budget then.
I have to first, can I apologize to Mr. Albernas? My daughter and my three of my grandchildren moved in on his block this week, so there goes the neighborhood.
Well,
Who I also coach in soccer too, by the way.
I actually knew that too.
well, I want to know who has who under surveillance is what I want to know. But anyhow, Susan, if we can begin, please.
The FY '20 recommended budget increases by about 4.57%, and that primarily reflects compensation increases and other personnel costs. The other issue for consideration is the fact that there's a new CIP project, the master lease for digital evidence storage. You will not consider that here today, but there is a joint GEO Public Safety Committee work session on Tuesday, where that'll be discussed in much more detail. The total recommended budget this year is $18.9 million. As I stated, it's almost a 5% increase. As far as personnel issues, you've got a senior legal assistant position in the gang unit. It had been grant funded until March 31st, but the funding was not renewed. The recommended budget maintains this position using general funds, and the position assists the gang unit with case preparation. A position that continues to be lapsed for FY '20 is the secretary to the state's attorney. In January, the county executive transmitted its FY '19 savings plan to address lower than anticipated tax revenues and the approximate $44 million spending gap the county faced in its FY '19 budget. This position was lapsed for the remainder of FY '19 for savings of $31,000, and the position remains lapsed for FY '20 for a savings of $65,000. The position was most recently held by a senior employee who retired in November, and the workload from that employee has been shifted to existing staff by splitting human resources duties, facilities management, and financial matters. One person functions as Mr. McCarthy's aide and handles invoice payments, credit card reconciliation, petty cash, and other financial matters, and the human resource duties were assigned to an employee who does the budget. Facilities management duties are shared. Another increase in the budget is the state's attorney's office salary plan. They had a new salary plan that was approved in FY '13. This $90,000 increase just reflects salary increases for eligible employees. There's a mandated salary adjustment for the state's attorney. Salary increases by $2,500, and that's mandated by law. There's a technical adjustment, changes to net to gross charges for police. Expenditures decreased by $26,000 in the state's attorney's office, and staffing is reduced by 0.5 FTEs, which reflects a chargeback to the police department for the cost of one assistant state's attorney who actually works at the Public Safety Training Academy. This position provides classroom instruction to recruits and sworn personnel, and the lower cost reflects the retirement of a senior attorney whose personnel costs were higher than the attorney who currently holds the position. Some other technical adjustments dealing with grants. Due to compensation changes for employees, total expenditures for victim services, the domestic violence prosecutor, and the firearm legal assistant exceeded total grant awards, and the FTE adjustment here allows revenue and expenses to align by shifting a portion of these costs to the general fund. Council staff, I have a concern about the Violence Against Women Act, since it's always up in play at the federal level, whether or not they're actually going to approve it. I was wondering if the state's attorney could talk a little bit to how much they generally get for this award and what might be in jeopardy for if we start losing these funds.
I'm going to
Please.
yield to Lisa.
Hi, we usually get $60,000 in personnel.
How much? I couldn't hear you.
60,000, and we've had that funding for probably 17 or 18 years now. We currently have the position through September 30th of this year, and the application to renew the funding generally doesn't come out until mid to late summer, so we don't really know at this point, but we can certainly come back to you if the funding, if VAWA funding is not renewed, we would come back and let you know that.
And we would do a supplemental or something. I mean, obviously, it's a position that we need.
I'll
so,
stay
yeah.
in touch with the state's attorney's office, and we can bring it back up if it becomes a problem.
Okay.
The next thing I wanted to discuss a little bit is the truancy prevention program update. This is not being expanded to any new schools for FY20. They currently operate at 19 middle schools throughout the county, and there's a list attached at Circle 11. But they're also going to have a new summer camp this July. I was wondering if the state's attorney could talk about that a little bit.
We're actually very proud of this, and we've had some coordination and cooperation from Montgomery County Public Schools who are allowing us to use Ritchie Elementary. So we are going to be targeting children from each of the 19 schools that are in our truancy abatement program. And we are also going to the Kennedy cluster and to the Watkins Mill cluster, and we are attempting to bring children in. So the men and women that work for me, and we do have a substantial investment of both attorneys as well as other individuals who work in the state attorney's office that work on the truancy abatement program. We are going to try to continue that through the summer months with four one-week sessions targeting the kids that are in those particular schools and in the programs that I just mentioned. We're hoping that we can transition them by reinforcing some of the positive messages for kids that they receive during our truancy abatement program. I know that several of you have attended our graduations before. That program services about 90% of the kids in our program are from a minority community here in Montgomery County. The number of reasons why kids are truant or not attending school regularly is there's many reasons as we have children. Some of the issues are tough and some of the issues are not tough, but we're trying to have a continuing program of service to those kids to encourage them when they come back in the fall, hit the ground running, stay engaged in their education. We'd rather see them in a classroom than in a courtroom.
I mean, we certainly applaud that as well. I mean, it's really a wonderful program. Did you want to comment, please?
Thank you. And John, it's great to see you, especially in this capacity. I know it's been a tough couple of years, and you look great, my friend. So, and glad you.
I feel healthy for the first time in a couple of years.
Yeah,
Good.
Good for you and for all of us.
And this program is really exemplary, and the outcomes that it's producing are real and authentic and incredibly impressive. I want to acknowledge George Sims, who's just doing yeoman's work and is such a great partner on so many different levels. And I think this program is ripe for national foundation support, and so I'd love to work with you guys to see if we can help collaboratively identify some grants that we can go after. And I think adding the summer camp element to it will further enrich our ability to go out and seek funds. So let's work collaboratively on that together. And while I know it's a tough budget year, I think moving forward, we do want to reward and acknowledge programs that are producing really substantial outcomes and are offering a systemic approach to addressing some pretty complex issues. So I think moving forward, over the next 4 years and hopefully beyond, want to work with you guys on seeing what we can do to expand also at the elementary school level too, because we're starting to see some growing issues in that space, unfortunately, as well.
Thank you. And let me just echo what has just been said, and also we want to certainly commend Phil Andrews, who was a member of this body for many, many years, who's, I guess, I don't know what his official title is with you, but he's certainly someone that's working on the...
One of my best hires.
Yeah, there you go, on the truancy program as well. And anybody that's gone to their graduation sees the real, and it's a lot of young people there, the change that this brings about. And it shows that they realize that people are caring and watching, and absolutely changes their lives. Did you want to jump on this?
Just a quick question on the program. We're all fans of the program, and I think everybody on the council is. Was the decision not to expand it this year based on just budget constraints and not any assessment that you're sort of running out of middle schools that would benefit from this, or staffing or something else?
I do believe that there are probably additional schools that would benefit from the program. I know that I was challenged by our now county executive years ago. Give me a number. I sat here last year and Mark said, give me a number if we went to every single middle school in the county. What happened, we actually did an internal assessment in terms of, we think the program is a quality program. We were afraid of jeopardizing the quality by expanding beyond our capacity to run it the way we currently run it. Now, we did have one school, for reasons that were unique to that particular school, there were some pupil personnel workers and some other people went out. I thought we were going to get back to the 20 level again this year, because one school's kind of opted out for a single year and coming back in. So I think we're scratching the surface in this area. Look, I'm not here to tell people naively that we are fully addressing the issue of children that are either habitually or chronically truant from school, because I think that number is around 8,000 or 9,000 in Montgomery County schools. So this is scratching the surface. Yes, Mr. Hucker, I think that we could use some additional resources, but we also want to make sure we don't lose our capacity to run it as efficiently as we currently.
Sure.
We were afraid, to be frank.
Yeah,
We were afraid that we would lose the value of the program by expanding it beyond our capacity to run it the way we wanted to run it. That's the simple answer.
So it's more than just the budget pressure. It makes
It's a
sense to
little bit-
pause
a
and
little bit-
focus
look,
on quality.
We could do
Pretend.
more with more, but I think it would be a very substantial investment. And we are very proud of the quality of what we're doing with these kids, and we don't want to lose the quality
Right.
simply for the sheer sake of expansion.
And I don't want to sound directive at all. Do you want to, I'd rather maintain the quality at 19 schools than lose the quality at 21 or something. But do you think of this as temporary, or do you think you'll be expanding again in 21 or 22 or 23?
I do think that we look every year to expand, and look, if you gave me a wish list, I think we should ultimately be at every middle school. I think we should be. So I absolutely, I agree with the sentiment that Mr. Elrich mentioned last year, that he wanted it at every school, so do I. But we want to do it in incremental steps so that the quality of what we're doing continues, rather than overreach and lose the quality of it. I'm getting redundant here, but that's what we're trying to do.
Just curious, we're not the only county that has students that are truant. Have you found any interest from any other school systems or state's attorney's offices in our neighbors that have approached you about this?
They've come, they visited us. I don't know that anybody's completely doing what we're
Right.
doing there with the truancy abatement program. I don't know that there's a parallel program to what we're doing.
Right.
We're really proud of what we're doing. And quite candidly, to some extent, I've always thought, maybe this is maybe facetiously, I've always thought it was always easier to give us the money because we're not governed by the maintenance of effort. So you have a lot more control in giving and taking money from me every year than if you funded this. Now, I'm really proud that the state attorney's office is involved in truancy abatement. People go, what is it? I mean, fiscally, it probably makes sense for other reasons, that because you can do and be more,
Sure.
you can do whatever you want, to me. With the schools, you can't.
Right.
But again, the need is there. Look, if it's not rocket science to know that a kid who's involved in her education is not involved in gangs, drugs, other kinds of high-risk behaviors. Look, I don't know how many things that Gabe and I did together when he was the head of recreation. I wish that every kid was required to participate in an extracurricular activity. I wish we had enough money that we could say between the hours of 2 and 4 every day, you got to do something. My life would, I'm a very lazy state's attorney. I'd like to have no cases. I'd like to have no kids to. I'd like to have no cases to
hearing.
prosecute or any kids to lock
told
up.
the truth.
I'd
You could tell.
I'd rather than be on a soccer team or on Palms. If you guys can work on making sure that after-school activities are mandated, my life will become much easier.
But it also should be noted that there is a partnership with Montgomery County Public Schools with the truancy program. I mean, obviously,
Absolutely.
My wife is a pupil personnel worker. She worked with it. I mean, it really is, it's truly a partnership. But in many cases for these young people, they needed another agency to say, we're going to look after you. The schools themselves couldn't necessarily always do it, and you couldn't convince that young person they needed to come to school. So this changed that. Go ahead, please.
I'm done.
We're
Thank
good?
you
Okay.
for question for your good work.
Susan, anything else on?
And that's it. As I stated, the digital storage will be discussed on Tuesday. We're recommending approval.
Go ahead.
I apologize, and I didn't tell Susan ahead of time I was going to say this. May I just, I have seen the executive recommended wage adjustment requests and recommendations. I have an observation to make. Is that generally it has been the practice, and by the way, anything that I'm about to say has absolutely no application to me because I'm not, this is does not mean any money to me personally.
Okay.
But there are 1,375 non-represented employees in Montgomery County. And as I looked at the wage adjustment recommendations, that includes everybody who works for me. I see disproportionate ways in which individuals in different unions are going to be compensated versus those who are not represented by the unions.
Yep.
We have traditionally, in a long-standing practice, provided that the non-represented men and women who work in this county were compensated at the same level as the represented members of this
For
community.
the general wage agreement.
General wage agreement. And I just, on behalf of the men and women, look, I think the men and women that work for me, and not all these 1,300 people work for me, but I think these are very hardworking men and women, and I believe very firmly that that is a departure that I would strongly suggest should be revisited, and then the men and women who are not union represented should receive the same wage increments as those represented by labor unions in this county. And I think that's a tradition that's been honored in this county for a long time. It goes beyond my budget. It talks to other agencies in the county. And I would just respectfully hope that there would be a discussion about that aspect of the overall budget. It's not unique to me, but I think it's troubling to me that we would depart from that long-standing tradition.
If it meets with your agreement, Susan, can we get a number, and it's going to be more than just your doing this, but could we get a number that would actually let us know how much more we would have to put on a reconciliation list to have the, I guess it goes from, it would go from 2 to 2.4 or 2.8, I don't remember.
Well, the non-represented get 2%, and others get 2.4, and then there are increments that some people are getting money back from 200.
Well, no, that part, but this is the general wage.
General
Yeah,
wage,
yeah.
yes.
It's,
Yes, actually, I think we probably have that on staff already, and I'll send it to you.
okay.
And I apologize for raising.
No, listen, we're
I think-
glad you did, I
I
mean,
think it's an important issue to the men and women that work for me.
We don't see it that often.
Okay.
anything else? Are we good? 3-0? Thank you very much for being here. One of the best speeches ever, Your Honor, one of the best, absolutely. And next, we're going to hear from the sheriff. He knew that. The sheriff knew we were going to hear from him.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you? Good to see you. If the panel could please introduce themselves.
My name is Darren Popkin. I am the sheriff here in Montgomery County.
Mary Lou Wordsick, I'm the budget specialist for the Sheriff's Office.
Richard Harris, Office of Management and Budget.
Thank you very much. And Susan, if you could lead us through, please.
This budget has a total expenditure of $25.3 million, and that's a 4.97% increase from the FY19 approved budget. I'm going to start with staffing first. Staffing update, the sheriff's office has an approved sworn complement of 152. That remains the same as last year. The sheriff has 2 recruit classes scheduled for this year, each with 4 recruits. I've been told that the sheriff's office is at full complement, or it will be, with the addition of a part-time public safety telephone reporting aide who will report to work within the next few weeks at the Family Justice Center. And at that time, the sheriff's office will have no vacancies. This budget is adding an IT position for the relatively new body-worn camera program. The position will be responsible for managing the sheriff's body-worn camera program and also providing support for the sheriff's information systems. The budget does reduce the recruit class by 6 fewer recruits for a savings of almost $300,000. They'll have, if this is approved, they'll have 4 in each of 2 classes instead of, I believe, 8 in each of 2 classes, or is it 7 in each? I'm sorry. Is it 7? You wanted, originally we're going to have 7 in each class?
14 total.
14 total, okay. And this is reducing it by 6. I've outlined overtime issues again. For the past 8 years, the sheriff has overspent budgeted overtime. On the bright side of that, they're overspending it by less and less every year. The FY19 to date number is $372,000. and that's the cost override of $115,000 for the year, so expect more. Overtime continues to be budgeted lower than historical levels at this point, which I want to get into in a minute. With the addition of the new juvenile magistrate position in the circuit court spoke to this a little bit about how they are envisioning trying to minimize impact on the sheriff and the sheriff's office. If they could talk about this a little bit, but as I stated before on the overtime, they have no room really for any additional overtime since they're overrunning these costs anyway. They may need additional positions to handle this. I was hoping Sheriff Popkin could talk a little bit about what the needs may be and whether or not the committee might want to add either new positions or additional overtime to the reconciliation list.
Please.
Chairman Katz, Councilmember Albonas, Councilmember Hucker. Let me just real briefly, for the record, I worked very closely with Mr. Elrich this year, County Executive Elrich, on to follow the guidelines of Mr. Elrich, County Executive, having to do with having a same service budget. So and as you see this, and as always, Ms. Frog did a phenomenal job getting to understand the sheriff's budget and transmit this to you all and with great clarity. So I do appreciate that, Susan. Thank you very much for doing that. But what I want to just let you all know is that I don't like coming over here after a budget is complete and what promises that I've made to the county executive as far as the same service budget. But unfortunately, we were not made aware of that there was going to be this new juvenile magistrate that was in the works in circuit court until after the county executive transmitted his budget to you. So Mr. McCarthy, myself, the public defender, and several other stakeholders, and the clerk, but she's on the state budget side, we were not aware that this was going to occur. So from the perspective, I just wanted to let you know, I'm not here trying to work the system and coming over and doing something that I, has already told the county executive that I was satisfied with this budget. Historically, anytime a new judge is added to the complement in the circuit court, the sheriff's office receives basically two positions. You fund two positions, and that's historically always been that way. And so what has occurred is there's been several meetings on this magistrate, and it is really a moving target, and even to one yesterday. And the original discussion of what the duties and responsibilities of what that magistrate was going to be, the magistrate was going to handle all delinquency matters. So in juvenile, you're not found guilty, innocent. It's it's a whole different rehabilitation type process. The delinquencies were all going to go in front of a magistrate, and then the magistrate was going to make the determination of whether or not they get held in the juvenile system at Noyes or not. The magistrates are not judges, so they were going to be placed in a different area of the courthouse that did not have holding cells or holding areas for these youths. And so all I was making them aware at the time was that it was just going to cause somewhat of a delay in having these hearings because we were just going to we couldn't stage them. We would bring them up one at a time. And so just for their purposes of actually having the programmatic way to do it. So they, as you heard Judge Greenberg mention this morning, they've gone back and really clarified two things. Number one, the magistrate's not going to be hearing delinquency cases. And if there happens to be something that a juvenile, one of these magistrates does put someone in potential to have to put someone into custody, a juvenile, they're going to move the hearing to a floor, the fourth floor, where there is actually that infrastructure is already built in. So the concern of some infrastructure, tens of thousands of dollars of having to fill out to finish shelled in space having to do with with holding facility type things is not going to occur. So that's really good as far as a savings amount. From the perspective, this will be a new courtroom opening up. We typically do get two deputies that are assigned. We are stretched to the limit there. what has occurred over the last number of years is that there used to be just a normal transition, especially in the summer, where judges would go on leave and there'd be, the number of deputies would equal that, but now there's never courtrooms open because they bring in the senior judges, the retired judges, so every day there's 24 to 26 courtrooms moving, so we were just stretched to the limit with that. So I'm here to work with the committee on, whether or not it is feasible in a year where, it's really should be a same service budget, of whether or not that is a possibility to expand as it is, if we were to put 2 additional deputies into the to the August class, Police Academy class, would go from 4 to 6. I'm not going to be getting that deputy out and be ready to staff that courtroom until sometime next year anyway. So we're going to have to pay the overtime funds or whatever it may be that I'm still working to see exactly what the duties and responsibilities, because they haven't finalized it yet. So I don't like coming to you in front of you and asking without concrete data analysis of what this person's going to do and how they're going to do it, but that's what I know at the moment.
Well, I can tell you, and obviously we're going to hear from everybody else, but as far as I'm concerned, we should put the 2 positions on, even though, on a reconciliation list, even though they're not going to be able to help out immediately. At some point, you're going to need them, and I'm concerned that if you have turnover and whatnot, and if you don't have people literally in the pipeline, then we're going to be even worse off than we are. And of course, for overtime, in your case, in the sheriff's case, you don't know how long a trial is going to last. You don't know what if a jury is out and you have to have personnel there. I mean, that's not something that you could control. Even if you wanted to control, you can't. So I believe that it should be something that we put on the reconciliation list and see where we can go from there. I don't know about you all.
I agree. The only caveat I would say is it sounds like since they may not need to start around July 1st, or would they need to potentially be there for the entire?
I mean, I can only tell you what, as of yesterday's meeting, their go-live date basically is still scheduled for July 1.
Okay.
Whether or not there's still so many things up in the air with this, that there are many other jurisdictions that have juvenile magistrates. And I know the data, the filing data throughout the state would indicate that Montgomery County really should be getting at least 1 or 2 additional circuit court judges, and I think this is somewhat of either a stopgap or for one of those positions. So the data and the filings indicate that. I do want to mention, Chairman Katz, that the overtime that Susan mentioned, and we are over, but understanding that most of the overtime that we have is really uncontrolled, and as you said, it's stuff that, late courts and different things to that extent. But I will tell you, before any of you all became council members, the sheriff's overtime budget was about $1 million. So if we have done a significant reduction in budget by changing so many areas since, really in the last 8 or 10 years since I've been sheriff, of changing shifts, changing procedures, processes, to drop that need for that $1 million budget down to where really, so the overtime funding appears on paper to be somewhat over, but it's it's 50% less than it used to be, and so it's way better. But for just an example, there was a very significant trauma case that came out of the detention center about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and he is now, that particular inmate, because the sheriff is responsible for the guarding of all those inmates, is out of state, and we have 2 deputies watching him 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's anywhere between $40,000 to $50,000 a month, and that's what it's being costing in overtime to guard him. So completely uncontrollable. It was a situation, that this guy was very seriously hurt Fortunately, he is getting better, but he has probably another anywhere from 2 to 4 to 6 more weeks hospital stay. So, these are uncontrolled items and uncontrolled things, but it's significant dollars, especially in these current budget times. And that's, so I just wanted to kind of mention that as long as, and I'm working very closely with Judge Greenberg to make sure that everything is staffed properly and that we are, to make sure that there's no inefficiencies within the court system.
I'd support the chairman's recommendation as well.
Okay.
I just have a few small operational expenditures for your consideration. The security contract that provides security at different county buildings, including Circuit Court, Child Support, Family Justice Center, as well as through the Montgomery County Police Department and the related county user agencies, is seeing a contract increase of $40,000. The total contract costs are estimated to be about $1 million. Ballistic vest replacement for approximately $24,000. They do have expiration dates, and the replacement cycle varies due to those expiration dates. For FY20, 42 vests will expire and be replaced, and the $24,000 covers 24 of the vests. The rest will be covered by a grant. The K-9 program support for $14,500. The Sheriff's Office currently has 5 K-9 teams, but they've never had a budget for the care of the dogs, and it costs between $25,000 and $35,000 each year, depending on medical issues. In addition to the food and the medical costs, training materials and other accessories are necessary to prepare the dogs and their handlers for duties. For FY20, this $14,500 will be covered and will pay for the replacement of a ballistic vest, modify an existing vehicle for K-9 use, and replace expired synthetic training materials for the explosive and drugs, which have a life expectancy of 2 years. There's also an AED replacement cost for $11,500 that will provide for 5 new AEDs to replace 5 of the 8 that the sheriff has. These have been strategically located around various areas of the circuit court, the sheriff office, lockups, and the Family Justice Center. Just one grant award to update Child Support Administration grant for $143,000. That reflects the additional grant award for FY20. As you stated, you wanted to add 2 deputy sheriffs to the reconciliation list. They're approximately $90,000 each, but I'll get the exact breakdown to put on the reconciliation list. And I'm recommending approval of the rest of the budget as submitted.
Okay. Anything else? We're good?
Mr. Katz, can I just make one closing comment, if
Yes,
I
sir.
could? I do want to thank the 3 of you for, reviewing the budget this morning. I wanted to just tag on to one thing Mr. McCarthy said and one thing Councilmember Hucker. So my school resource officer at Magruder High School is responsible for and participates in John McCarthy's truancy program at the 2 feeder middle schools, which is Redland and Shady Grove Middle. Yep. And as part of a large efficiency, which John was talking about, and one of those 2 schools had a higher truancy rate than the other, and she's a mentor in that program. And I'm telling you, it has made a difference, really, in the truancy at that school. Not so much because she mentored, she's just part of a large group, a village making it happen. But I would certainly at some point support, as you all would as well, that as long as it can maintain the efficiencies and the quality of what the program does. Because that particular program, I see by the way she reports back to me on it, it is really making a difference, and it's making a difference just in the 2 schools that she goes to. So just wanted to.
It really is. It's a game changer.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, can I clarify one thing?
Sure.
Exactly what are you adding to the reconciliation list? The 2 deputy sheriffs, were there any overtime additions as well?
Well, I believe we should be adding something for the overtime. And in one of your did you have a suggestion for the, I can't find it real fast.
It was on the last page of my written packet. I'm just adding some overtime to deal with unknown needs at this
50,000.
point, and tranches of 50,000 each.
And you said 2, I see it, 2 tranches, 1 or 2 tranches.
Yes.
I believe we should be adding something. I don't know whether it should be 1 or 2 tranches of 50,000. I guess if we added the 2 tranches, and that way we can always scale back. We couldn't add additional once we realize what we're going to need. So Are you okay with that? Yeah? So that would be, and thank you for clarifying. Okay, thank you, sir. We are adjourned.